Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Cleantech Sustainable Healthcare event. I'm very excited to talk about this important topic, and we are lucky to have Erika Kimball moderating the discussion with our three expert panelists, Terry Duffina, Melinda Su En Lee, and Anna Brown. My name is Lael Giebel, Events Co-Chair for Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. Thank you all for being with us today and choosing to dedicate an hour of your time on this beautiful spring evening to attend this event and learn more about building a sustainable healthcare system. Next slide. We'll start with some quick housekeeping items, then move on to the discussion with our panelists, and we will have some dedicated time for Q&A. Don't hesitate to drop your questions in the chat. Next slide. Great. Some Zoom etiquette before we start. You are all probably pretty familiar with it after 2+ years of virtual meetings, but a few reminders. Please write your full name, and turn on your video if you feel comfortable doing so. We love to see your faces. WCS volunteers, please add an asterisk next to your name. Out of respect for our speakers, please mute yourself during the call. We encourage you to put your LinkedIn in the chat and connect with other attendees. The more you get involved and active during this event, the more you benefit from it. Next slide. So, who are we? WCS is a nonprofit originally founded in the SF or San Francisco Bay Area. We are now in 13 countries and have a membership base of more than 500 professional women and men. The goal of the organization is to support women in their careers in the clean tech industry. WCS is celebrating its 12th year, which is pretty impressive considering we are a nonprofit primarily run by volunteers. What we do at WCS, monthly events such as panels like this one you're on now, and social events. We switched to virtual events during the pandemic, but we are moving back into personal events as well. So stay tuned, especially if you are in the San Francisco Bay Area or LA. We also have a mentorship program. That's a 3-month cohort-based program which supports women advancing in their careers in the clean tech and sustainability sectors. And we have our annual flagship event, WCS Talks, which is a TED-style talks event. Next slide. In case you're not yet a WCS member, I encourage you to sign up. Just scan the QR code to do so, and you'll get reimbursed for tonight's event. Feel free to reach out to me or to other WCS members on the call if you have any questions about membership. And speaking of events, here are some of our upcoming events. April 6th, we have the WCS Book Club. We'll be reading Speed and Scale by John Doerr. March 30th is the Cul-de-sac Tour in Tempe, Arizona. So if you live in Arizona, check out the first carless community in Tempe, Arizona. April 27th and May 4th, we have the Executive Leadership Workshop, which is a skill building with Pam Samarco. And then May 11th, we have Climate Tech Cocktails Ladies Night in San Francisco, California. Next slide. And now I would like to introduce Erika. Erika is the founder of Kimball Sustainable Healthcare, a business consulting firm that creates sustainability strategies, programs, and communications for hospitals and healthcare companies. A positive and determined change agent with expertise in climate action, zero waste, and sustainable product lifecycle for healthcare, Erika brings people together to create sustainability solutions that support quality, safety, and value. Erika loves learning and adventure and holds an MBA from Presidio Graduate School. And I'll pass it over to Erika.
Thank you, Lael. I'm super excited to be hosting a panel with WCS tonight and talking about my favorite topic, which is sustainable healthcare. Thanks to everyone for attending. When people think about the greening of healthcare, they think that it's a pretty hard job. There are tons of barriers like regulations, cost, and critical workflows, and they wouldn't be wrong. But healthcare is newly rising to the challenges of climate change and social justice. And for the first time, we're doing so as an industry, starting by reducing our environmental footprint. Healthcare is building sustainability with new leadership coalitions, new sustainable infrastructure funding via the IRA, and a renewed focus after the pandemic on sustainable clinical materials. What makes me most excited about the push towards sustainability in healthcare is that before I was a sustainability leader, I was a nurse. I've seen medical development and the pace of progress inside of healthcare. And when you point this industry of mission-driven, science-based change makers at problems like climate change and pollution, I really think that we have this growing opportunity together for new innovation, great partnerships, and quality solutions. It is an honor to be hosting this panel of women who are driving positive change in the healthcare industry. These panelists are building climate action program for hospitals and healthcare, bringing circular economy solutions to things like pharmacy packaging, and developing better and more sustainable healthcare materials. A little logistics, we're going to have individual panel chats with each of the participants. We're going to take one question from the audience during each panel. We'll then open it up to full Q&A with the whole panel at the end of our chats. All right. Without further ado, we'll introduce our first panelist, Terry Duffina. Terry is a healthcare sustainability leader, strategist, program builder, and a mentor. She's the director of sustainability at Stanford Health Care, and she has expertise in corporate sustainability, health and safety, sustainable energy, and facilities management. Terry is working at the forefront of healthcare's climate action movement as hospitals and industry partners begin to tackle decarbonization and climate resilience. Welcome, Terry Duffina.
Thanks, Erika. It's so nice to be here tonight. Thank you to the WCS team for organizing this event. It's really an honor.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to chat with you about all the new developments that are happening in healthcare. I really do think the pace of change is something new and exciting. So let's start at the beginning with a little background. Tell us about your journey in sustainability and what led you to become a sustainable healthcare leader yourself.
Yes, thank you. Really, my journey into sustainability started when I was deciding where to invest my money for grad school. I knew at that time that I wanted to be a part of the change within a company to increase their environmental performance, because I figured at that time that, and as it is today, if private sector companies aren't improving their environmental performance, we're just not going to get where we need to go fast enough. It needs to be accelerated from within the organization. So that's what drove me in my business studies and my international environmental policy studies. I spent several years in the semiconductor industry and then in aerospace defense, working on a variety of focus areas, but I joined the healthcare sustainability adventure part of my life in 2016 when I joined Stanford Health Care. So really what drew me into sustainable healthcare and this role at Stanford was really my experience as a patient. So I consider myself first and foremost a patient of Stanford Health Care, and I happened to get a job with an institution that that is working on improving our patients' lives and the health of the planet at the same time. So it's really kind of a magical combination. I'm very fortunate to be in this position today.
Excellent. So there's kind of a before time and then a current time. And the before time was maybe 2 to 3 years ago. Healthcare in the last 2 to 3 years has really been taking bold steps around climate action. And it's been exciting to be a part of. What are the major industry changes that you've seen and what gives you the most hope?
Thank you for that. So really how I like to describe the change that I've seen over the last few years is there's been a convergence. There's been a convergence of top-down policy changes that have really taken off in the last few years. For example, we've made federal commitments to international protocols that many people on this call are aware of. The Biden administration's commitment to greenhouse gas reductions on behalf of the federal government. That led to the Department of Health and Human Services committing to the same goals on behalf of that department. And in turn, the Health and Human Services Department created a voluntary pledge for healthcare industries across the country to match their commitments. So bringing alignment into the whole entire healthcare industry, to the extent that even the Joint Commission, which is the kind of regulatory agency for inspecting hospitals and healthcare buildings, has made sustainable healthcare and sustainability practices within hospitals one of their 3 top priorities for this coming period of time. So there have been tremendous top-down initiatives that have taken place in the last couple of years that we really haven't seen before. And then what's super exciting too is the bottom-up pressures as well. So we're seeing so many clinicians come forward now, understanding that their patients are faced with climate change and the impacts on their lives, but clinicians are desiring to make an impact in their work environment too. They want to work on waste reduction. They want to work on healthier materials in the hospitals. So we're seeing this really kind of blossoming movement of clinicians expressing interest and desire to work on this, and as well medical school students. So medical school students are keenly aware of what's going on the planet, and they really want to make climate change impacts a piece of their career. So because of this top-down and this bottom-up convergence, we're just seeing this massive acceleration within the healthcare industry of sustainability being a priority. And it's just a very exciting time to be in this field.
Indeed, indeed. I think the thing that one message to healthcare that it's for real this time is that the regulatory bodies are in the sustainability business now. Again, regulation is one of the barriers sometimes to sustainability implementation. And so now we really are aligning across the industry. As these changes have converged, there's new work being done inside of healthcare organizations. Can you speak a little bit about how your work has changed and what are you working on this year?
So I think because of this, like I was saying, this convergence between the top down and the bottom up pressures that we're seeing, the executives and the boards of directors are really taking notice. They're seeing this come up within their circles. They're seeing this come up within leadership summits, and they're getting asked this by their staffs. So they are taking notice of this and they are acting on it. So also for private entities, a lot of folks on this call work in they supply goods and services to healthcare systems. ESG has become like the next frontier for all private sector businesses. There's pressures in the EU, there's pressures upcoming from the SEC, and all of these private sector companies are going to be trying to wrestle with and figure out ESG reporting and what that means. So that's a second kind of driving force, I think, that is changing. I think the third one is the evolution of funding opportunities. So healthcare systems are confronted with challenges when it comes to capital investment. If we want to buy solar panels to put on our hospital, it's a big capital investment, and we're usually competing against MRI machines or some other kind of patient-facing investments to compete against. So there has been like a explosion really of the issuance of green bonds. So if you have a solid ESG program and you're eligible to apply for those opportunities, they can really help sell the business case for those investments. And then the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year. Literally, we all know probably that it's the largest climate bill ever passed in the United States. And there's funding there, hopefully that many of the people on this call can take advantage of, and that the healthcare systems are really going to aim for when it comes to building more sustainable and resilient facilities.
Yeah, it is an exciting time when finance calls to ask what you're doing for sustainability. Yeah. So with this, I'm going to go first. What are the opportunities? And then we can talk about the barriers. What we're talking about is an entire industry that's a little slow to the game, but has this there really is new movement. And so there's new opportunity. And so where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation? for sustainability companies who may not be in healthcare to help join this, fight?
Yeah, so I think that one thing that companies involved with the healthcare industry need to consider, at least, and I know that not everybody can do this, but the opportunity to sign on to the same HHS pledge that the healthcare systems are broadly adopting right now would be tremendously helpful, because in that pledge, the healthcare systems, which over 100 of us are pledged to do this, representing over 800 hospitals across the country. So it's becoming a little bit more popular than just a niche movement. But one of the commitments is reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and getting to carbon neutrality by 2050. So being able to calculate your company's greenhouse gas emissions inventory would be in direct alignment with what the healthcare systems themselves are doing, which I think only bodes well for example, a company that's trying to market their goods or services to their customers.
Excellent. So kind of going back to the sustainability implementation inside of healthcare, we have this new opportunity, but what that requires is for us to build new programs. There's been a little sustainability programming in the industry to rise to the challenge of climate action. The industry itself is pretty new at this. And so can you talk about some of the barriers to implementation and what your approach to navigating those barriers kind of entails?
Yeah, I think that if you're in an organization and your organization doesn't necessarily have a strong sustainability or ESG program, your job just became change management, and your job just became overcoming barriers and solving challenges. So, in healthcare, asking physicians, for example, to change what tools they use when they're in an operation, or we're doing a surgical procedure, it's hard to get them to change products. When you have super busy nurses who are providing so much patient care, having them take the time to decide which waste bin to throw away a certain item in order to decrease our contributions to landfill, it's challenging to communicate that and to ask them to do that when we all know that the patient is the reason that everyone goes into healthcare in the first place. So none of this is easy. But how do we navigate those barriers and challenges? Especially the barrier of change is, it's a mission-driven specialty that we're all involved in. And so we have to persist. Not every great idea comes with great timing in terms of the people who need to make the change. So it really requires persistence and tenacity and patience. And you have to be willing to resist I told you so's when after you suggested it 5 times, they finally say, well, I suppose I could try it. Okay, well, so it's really looking for more opportunities really than you can handle to push things forward, because some of them are going to move slow and some of them might just take off really fast. So I think that overcoming barriers just takes a mission-driven, high-level commitment to change, and that's what really gets you through.
Yes. One thing I think one barrier that healthcare has the honor of navigating right now is that we do have this need for fast solutions and innovation. And so there is this kind of natural mismatch between when you're an innovator, you're trying to rush something to market. When you start bringing those things to the healthcare market, I think that the pace of innovation versus the pace of change in healthcare, it's definitely a different pace. I know myself, I've internalized the pace of change in healthcare and I feel myself moving slowly. We don't really have a lot of time right now. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how we marry those two, the patience of working with healthcare, so that there is more opportunity for new solutions.
I know that, being in the position that I'm in, I get marketing from a variety of places every day, like people trying to get my attention about new things all the time. And I know that the barrier is tremendous for companies that are trying to break into a healthcare system with a new product. I would suggest that we leverage our networks. We leverage, for example, the group purchasing organizations that hospitals use to make their purchasing decisions. That is one way to get more visibility into a hospital supply chain organization. Also, you never know which contact that you have or who you talk to is going to really fuel the relationship. So you could be chatting with somebody that works in the cafeteria, and they could be the lever that you need to influence the surgeon in the OR, like maybe they're your cousin or maybe they're, so you can't discount the relationships that you have with the whole healthcare network, because there are all kinds of informal networks within an organization that oftentimes get more done. So the more you try to advocate for some of these changes with anyone in the network, the more likely you'll get an introduction, and that means a lot more than cold calling or just shooting emails out the door.
Excellent, thank you. Should we take a question from the audience?
Sure.
If anyone has a question, and if not, I've got a few extra. All right.
I have a question. I
Yeah.
have a question. You had mentioned, Terry, about internal organizations that get things done. Can you give us a little bit more insight about that, and kind of, for those of us that are interested in working within the healthcare, what those departments may be or those organizations, just so we can tap into them?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it depends on the organization, really. And this is true for any sustainability programming at any organization. But there are groups of people in every organization who are already trying to solve sustainability problems. For example, at Stanford Health Care, we have a very strong commitment to food as medicine, and our food services department has really made leaps and bounds changes to make their food more sustainable, more local, and quite frankly, more healthy and it's taken them years. So tapping into that team was especially important because they were already motivated to make the changes. But I've talked to other sustainability leaders at other healthcare systems, and it might be their supply chain team in that particular organization. It might be their environmental services team in their organization. So finding out the organization's little pockets of accelerated change helps a lot.
To add on to that, industry groups, like there's these new I swear there's a new coalition every day. And so the National Academy of Medicine has a climate action collaborative. Healthcare Without Harm they were kind of the first sustainability group for hospitals and healthcare, and Association of Healthcare Resource and Materials Management is an American Hospital Association group, which has new sustainability work. So we can follow up with some of those resources. Always good, exciting things to follow. Excellent. Terry, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about the circular economy and pharmacy now. Melinda Su En Lee is the co-founder and CEO at Parcel Health, a sustainable medication packaging company serving pharmacies and healthcare systems in the US and Canada. Melinda founded Parcel Health in 2019 while studying for her doctorate of pharmacy at the University of Michigan. Some fun facts: Melinda was born and raised in Malaysia. She speaks 5 languages, and she's also a gardener and a rescue dog mom. Welcome, Melinda, to the panel.
Thank you so much for having me, Erika. So happy to be here. So happy to see all the chat going on in the little chat box. So just happy to be here.
Excellent. Melinda, let's start with the important part. Tell us about your product, your eliminated single-use disposable plastics from pharmacy.
Yeah, so I have them right here. So everyone's familiar with the orange plastic pill bottles you get from pharmacies. It's an orange dinky bottle, put it up, it tips over. It's really hard to open, especially for elderly adults that push and twist motion. So this was something that I saw a lot in pharmacy school. And so this is our product, and I'm going to put it in front of me so that it doesn't get blurred out. It's called the Fill Box. And so we have a lock mechanism where instead of a push and twist, you tug on it, it won't open. And the only way to open it is to push up to unlock it, press and pull down. And then the pills come out from this little hole from the top. My video is not mirrored, so I'm having a hard time coordinating myself. Yeah, and part of my frustration with the orange plastic pill bottles are really hard to read directions on it. And the medication label has a lot of important information, right? Like drug, name, strength, how to take it, side effects to watch out for. So when we designed the Fill Box, I wanted to make sure that there was flat surface so that you could see name, medication, how to take it. Very simple, very straightforward. And if the pharmacy wanted to integrate anything, more e-health type, it can be displayed very clearly rather than sort of squeezing it into the orange pill bottle. So yeah, this is our flagship product. It's called the Fill Box. We have been having fun designs like we have a Christmas edition. We wanted to sort of rival the Starbucks red cup, and our Canadian pharmacies all have custom boxes. So this one is specific to the Canadian pharmacies brand. So yeah.
So cool, so cool. Yeah, I was on your website earlier today and saw the holiday edition and thought that was a very nice touch. So tell us a little bit about what led you to create a sustainable pill bottle.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not the path that I was planning on. I'd gone to pharmacy school, really wanted to go be a clinical pharmacist. But around 2016, there was a ban on plastic recycling imports into China. So China used to be the primary country that accepted all the plastic waste from the United States. So, when you toss your plastic waste into your recycling bin, it often gets packaged into a large container and shipped abroad. So in the United States, more than 4,000 of these containers leave the US every single day. So like true container size that leaves the country. So China stopped accepting that because they're like, we don't want American waste anymore, get this out of here. And a lot of it started getting siphoned to Southeast Asia. So Malaysia was one of the ones that were hardest hit. There was a ton of these containers just filled with American plastic waste getting shipped to Malaysia. So I'm standing there in the pharmacy, right? I'm like giving out these pill bottles. I'm like packing medications in these orange pill bottles. And I knew as I was going through it that a lot of these are going to end up in landfills in my own home country. There's one but just 45 minutes away from my parents' home, just a giant landfill, just filled with American plastic waste. And then, just knowing this one problem, this waste problem, and then the other problem, which is just the patient usability. Nobody looks forward to getting their medications. It's a really, really ugly form to package medication. It's really not safe for, not to say not safe, but the instructions are unclear. It's really hard to use. And so nobody even likes it to begin with. And so I thought, there has to be a simpler way. There has to be something better. And so sort of the guiding principle for me and my co-founder has been, we want to create something that's sustainable, but it's also going to completely usurp the orange plastic pill bottles. We want to let the orange plastic pill bottle retire into a science history museum and have something better take over.
That's excellent. One fun fact about healthcare is that it takes so long to get products to market that we adopted a bit of a, if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality. And that's why things like the plastic pill bottle are still around. And so I'm wondering, your direct customers, right, are pharmacies and that then distribute the pill bottles to customers. And so what are some of the questions that you have to navigate while making that sale? What do they ask you about safety, about quality? You know, what's part of you making the case to these clients?
Yeah, so the number one question I always get is price. Pharmacies really care about price. They don't want to pay more for things. Their margins are already very thin. And so the way we sort of talk, so we started our journey with marketing this product towards independent pharmacies that we knew were not getting very good prices for their plastic pill bottles to begin with. So price is often top of mind consideration. And so as we talk to these pharmacies about, yes, we're a little bit more pricey, but because of how much branding can go into this, they can save a lot of money instead of spending money, you know, personalizing that little paper bag that you get from the pharmacy, right? You take it, you go into your car, you rip it and you toss it away, and they spend all that money personalizing that paper bag. Instead of that, you know, they can do it directly on the primary packaging, and it sits on the patient's shelf for 30 days, 60 days. That's always top of mind for them. The second thing that's top of mind, they often ask, is it child resistant certified? And we're not yet child resistant certified. So I always remind them, it's just like all the other adherence packaging that they are used to packaging. So pharmacies, they have the orange plastic pill bottles, but they also have these adherence packaging that they pack, you know, single medication doses into little packages. And once they make that connection, they're like, oh yeah, you're right. You know, I carry 3 to 4 other packaging in my pharmacy that isn't child resistant. And then finally they ask water resistance, because whenever you think about paper, you're like, you know, how can paper withstand, you know, the elements? There's a lot of things in our fridge that holds water and liquid that's made of that's, you know, paper based. So, you know, I always tell them, you know, we have a water resistant coating with a little bit of grease resistance on the outside, and it's actually 2 boxes together. So the medication is getting 2 layers of protection. It sits inside this inner box that's really protected. So those are top 3, and we go by one with the top concern, and then we talk. And honestly, I just give it to the pharmacists. Like, they play with it, they feel it. You can just tell the difference, and their patients get it too.
So speaking of the patients, right, I think that probably the biggest selling point is actually giving it to patients and seeing their reaction. I'm guessing that. So I'll let you confirm that and see, maybe I'm missing something there, but how are customers reacting to having a plastic-free option for pill bottles? And how do you get that feedback, right? Because you're business to business a little bit. How do you get that direct customer feedback and help make the case?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually have to almost get a trickle up response from the pharmacy to us. Obviously, the pharmacy paying for the product, ordering it again is a, you know, really positive sign for us. But, you know, they'll tell us their patients came in, you know, they love the fill box, you know, this person changed all their medications to the fill boxes. You know, I get emails from patients who have used it, and, you know, the pharmacy gave it to them and it says the fill box, and then they go look us up, you know, Parcel Health, and then they, you know, send us in, you know, emails telling us they love it. You know, they've hated the orange plastic pill bottles for years and years, and it's so awesome to see something new in the market that's sustainable, that, you know, at the end, once they're done with their medication, they can recycle or compost, and then they pick up their next medication, and again, it comes in a little fill box, and it's really fun to use.
It's fun, and it's also sustainable. Your package can be, is it talk about, is it recyclable? Like, what do patients do with it after use?
Yes, so it's both recyclable and compostable. So you can toss it in your regular recycling bin, it'll get recycled just like regular paper. And this was a very specific material choice. You know, there are a lot of different materials out there. There are a lot of different materials out there that, you know, can be sustainable, but we wanted to pick something that would rival the price of plastic, which paper was one of it, had, you know, the ability to sort of be flat when we need it to be, because these guys get shipped around flat, which so saves on shipping costs. And we also wanted to make sure that it would be compostable at the end, because not everybody recycles, and I would love that whatever I made or manufactured won't outlive me. So if somebody doesn't recycle, they toss it into the garbage can, it's going to decompose. Or if you know, put it in your garden. Last spring, I actually used a bunch of these as seed starting pods, and it worked great. My tomato plants thrived. Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's the healthcare dream right there. So this is part of my work in healthcare, part of work that I do with healthcare companies, which is that just this case, like plastic has a lot of great uses, and that's why it's so ubiquitous in healthcare. But when you're thinking about something that you're going to use once and throw away, know what we know now, right? Maybe it's not the right material for the job. Like we know enough now that it's time to reconsider things like this. That I don't want my pill bottle to outlive me. And so what you're doing, right, is taking an everyday product and using it to build circular economy practices inside of the healthcare industry. Excellent. Tell me from your vantage point. So, you know, this is your product and plenty of work to do in this space. Where do you see opportunities for healthcare to design for sustainability?
I think there's plenty. I think like identifying areas where the circular economy wouldn't necessarily work, like areas where sterility is extremely high in priority, right? So maybe some of those you wouldn't want it to be circular, but even then, I'm reading all these like different research publications about how a lot of hospitals are shifting over to these single-use surgical instruments or surgical, accessories when there's not a lot of data supporting that it's, more sterile compared to just reusing high-quality stainless steel surgical equipment. So there's that. But within healthcare, there's so much supply chain that supports it, right? There's the packaging, there is, the fork and spoon that's used in the hospital. There's the little, Ziploc bags. I don't know why healthcare loves Ziploc bags. Like everywhere I have worked in pharmacy is Ziploc bags. If you need to bring one thing to the next spot, even though you could do it with just holding in your hand, they're like, put it in a Ziploc bag. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, just being a little bit more mindful, just a little bit more mindful. And a lot of it comes from patients and nurses who, come back to pharmacy and be like, why did you package my medication 3 times in a Ziploc bag? It's unnecessary. Yeah.
That is a fact. Healthcare does, in fact, love Ziploc bags.
Oh my gosh, it drives me insane because like I try to reuse them and you can't even reuse them because they're so flimsy. You try to tear off the label and the plastic just stretches, I almost wish they just use better plastic so I can just reuse it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's take a question from the audience. Who has a question for Melinda?
We had a couple pop up in the chat. It looks like Kimberly, did you have a question? Okay, she asked.
Hi, sorry, mine was answered. I was just wondering if you work directly with drug companies or pharmacies, because there's so much information that needs to go on the boxes. So what was your route? But you answered it by saying that you're working with pharmacies. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I can go quickly through
I have
these.
another question if you want another question.
Yes, go for it.
How do you make the paper? You said it's grease resistant or water resistant, and how I know we work with a lot of different materials as well at our company. How do you do that with paper?
Yeah, so it's a proprietary coating that we have. It's aqueous based. There's no PFAS in it. And so it's a water-based coating that we put on the paper that gives it that water resistance and a little bit of grease resistance.
That's really awesome. That's like, if you went down your list, that's like the 4th or 5th question we get. Are you PFAS free? Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh,
It's yeah. So it's a really great product.
thank you so much. I hope you'll have one in your house soon.
I hope so too. Those orange bottles have always bothered me as well. So
Thank you.
great job.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, speaking of better materials, we can go to our third panelist. And her name is Anna Brown. Anna Brown, PhD, is a chemist turned entrepreneur, and she's based in Portland, Oregon. Her startup, Stark Street Materials, has created a high-performance and non-toxic radiation shielding material. Anna is now building a chemical and materials company with a minimal environmental footprint that is going to help phase out lead from the medical industry. Welcome, Anna Brown.
Hi, thank you so much, Erika. I'm still chuckling about the Ziploc bags because one of the medical practices I came across when looking into radiation shielding materials is the doctors literally take a brick of lead and put it in a plastic bag, and then we'll put it inside a patient when they're doing a certain type of radiation treatment. And it was just like, I can make a better lead brick in a plastic bag.
The opportunity, the vision.
Yeah.
In a previous life, I used to put on lead and walk into a windowless room to do radiation procedures for hours. And then I went to grad school. But this is near and dear to my heart. It's both a lighter product and a healthier product. And so let's start there. Tell us about your product and why your company is working to phase out lead from radiation shielding.
Sure. So as I like to say in my origin story, I did this the wrong way. I invented a thing and then figured out a market application for it. Definitely do it the other way. Start with a market or a need and then go towards find the technology. But when I was a grad student, I was working on a nanoparticle synthesis for bismuth nanoparticles. So bismuth is the element on the periodic table it's next to lead. It's very high density, but totally non-toxic for whatever reason. So pepto-bismol, the active ingredient, is bismuth, and kind of came across neat ways to use it as lead replacement. Or historically, we always think of lead as a good radiation shielding material, and it does block radiation, but it's got a lot of really nasty, downstream consequences. So yeah, we'll wrap up the whole creative process, but fast forward 10 years, I run a startup that makes bismuth particles, and then there's a surface coating that goes onto them, and then we embed them in elastomers. So since Melinda brought a show and tell, I thought I'd bring one too. This is the material that we'll be making our aprons out of. You can see some of the bismuth particulate. Well, I put a background up, so of course you can't. But it's elastic. Oh man, this is like the worst demo ever. So it's elastic. It stretches, it drapes, it performs like a fabric, but this has a 0.5 millimeter lead shielding equivalent to it, which means you can make a whole garment, you can make it shaped. I'm looking at you, Erika, like you know exactly what I'm talking about because you probably do, but right now they're heavy, they're not particularly ergonomic, the weight is not well distributed when you wear it, they inhibit your motion, and the important one that turns out I hadn't even thought of when I started this is that the current lead aprons are not really cleanable. They're fabric, so they're like woven pieces of fabric, and the protocols from the Joint Commission to whichever hospital specific is you're supposed to just wipe them down to sterilize them. But, as you know, wiping down a piece of fabric with lots of little pores where bugs can live doesn't really work. And there's probably a lot of literature out there where someone went into their hospital and grew cultures off of everything that was living on their aprons. And then historically with the lead aprons, they're made of a lead salt composite sewn inside of some fabric, and that lead salt doesn't stay contained. So they do actually leach lead. So a number of radiation technicians or healthcare workers work very closely with these things will have similar lead contamination levels as people who work in lead smelting factories. Like it's not it's not negligible. So I had this bismuth technology and puttered around a lot of random ideas and landed on a market need, which is non-toxic, lighter weight, better performing shielding materials, and I just happen to have solved a bunch of problems. But the one I'm sort of most excited about is the sterility, because in healthcare, a lot of ways to make things sterile is you coat it with a piece of plastic and then you throw the plastic out. And being able to have something that is like designed into the material that you can autoclave it, or you can like stick it in a bucket of bleach or a bucket of ethanol, sterilize it, clean it up, it's exciting for me. I can keep rambling for hours, but let me know if there's.
Yeah, no, I want to hear about the product development process. I also want to explain like what it's like to wear this shielding. I think everyone's gone to get an X-ray and you kind of like hold up that thick piece of kind of the weighted blanket over you. You know, part of it is to work inside of a radiation room. One thing you protect is your thyroid. And so you actually kind of have this cuff that's going around.
That's going to be our first product we're going to pitch. This is a 2-dimensional version, but I'm getting I don't know where my 3-dimensional one is. It looks very rough, but yeah, a thyroid collar. So it goes around your neck, and oddly enough, because we can make it curved, which you can't really do with the current materials, you can get better protection. So it actually will increase the radiation protection. There, as Erika probably knows, nurses and other people who wear these, it touches their skin, and if you can't clean it and it touches your skin every day, you develop a rash, or it smells, or it's covered in makeup, or, you know, God forbid you have to share one with somebody else in the hospital and they're just disgusting. And so I had a couple of nurses tell me they just don't wear them because they're too gross. So being able to make one that, you know, at the very least you can wash it in the sink between procedures or get the makeup off, I think it's going to make things better.
Absolutely. I've had 3 years of makeup stain masks from the hospital. So tell me about this part. So you started with chemical development and now gone to material applications, and now you're actually producing materials. Can you talk to me about that process, what it's been like, and then, you know, what it's like to actually set up things like supply chain?
Well, it's a big frame shift, right? I was going to go be a scientist. I was going to be a scientist. I'll, you know, work in the lab for the rest of my life. And when I started looking around at, you know, jobs or career paths, and realized I didn't really want to, and it was going to be really hard to go work for a chemical company that, you know, knowing what a lot of them do to the world, to go be part of that corporate structure. So starting my own company and developing this technology, and, you know, being able to design that whole process and the whole supply chain from the ground up with my ethos, which is don't be an evil chemist, has been really gratifying. But it's also enabled me to make decisions about like how we wash the particles, or how we coat the particles, or how we incorporate the particles, and how to choose green solvents, right? Green chemistry is it's a big field, and there's lots of stuff out there on, you know, what do you call a green solvent? Is it that it comes from a green source, or that it doesn't impact the environment when you release it, or that it's unlikely to explode if you have a lot of it, you know, all sorts of these funny considerations. But being able to really design a lot of these processes and design this whole factory and setup and production and supply chain with the green ethos in mind it's been really gratifying.
That's really cool. And now you're actually producing the product. So you've got actually the material, you now have set up this supply chain, you're using green chemistry to make the products, and now you're actually designing them. And so what is that process like? I would imagine there's some sewing involved. I don't know. This is really,
no,
it's like all the parts of the brain.
There's no sewing. So I designed the whole thing with no stitching, really specifically because those holes can trap bugs. So it's an entirely single molded, I mean, the best analogy I think is those silicone mats you use in your kitchen. Basically like one of those, but as a garment, and then heavier and blocks x-rays. So that design process and figuring out how to design molds and how to buy large equipment, and I'm deep in the weeds on that one. And I don't have any advice for anybody except it's fun and terrifying. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So let's talk about this part, that not only are you kind of doing this whole chemistry to production, what you're designing for is the healthcare industry. And so there's just a lot of, here we go again with these special constraints. What we're talking about is designing products for a radiation space, right? For the clinical interface, like a clinical environment. Can you talk about what's the biggest barrier that you've really had to navigate, kind of in focusing on those issues, and how you've done that?
You know, I think one of the biggest issues that any startup or any idea trying to transition into a startup and raise all that is how you're going to approach your customers, and then why they're going to buy your product. You know, coming in with something that looks better, that's may not be enough to disrupt a whole supply chain and network. And as we were talking about earlier, getting a hospital to buy something is a whole special kind of challenge. But figuring out, who in that network is going to stamp their foot down and say, buy this. And I did a lot of customer discovery and talking to people about how they currently use lead shielding, what they would like, what's different. And, far and away, everybody said the weight is the biggest issue. But I am sort of hoping as we become more cognizant of the materials we use around us and what their environmental impact is, but also their health impact, that we'll really be able to walk away from lead in most of these products. For a large number of reasons, just the safety of the hospital, right? Somebody pointed out, if the hospital catches on fire, there's firemen that have to go in there and put it out. So if it's full of molten lead, that's a very different risk analysis. And we really saw that with 9/11 and a lot of the firefighters that went in and had all the impact of the various burning materials on them over the long term. So just being broader minded about it. So figuring out why somebody's going to buy it has been one of the big challenges, how I'm going to make it. And then, how to not be an evil chemistry company. And I'm definitely working into my business model, a buyback program that, it keeps these out of circulation and keeps them out of the landfill. And then we can recycle a lot of the materials that go into them. So keeping it all, sustainable-ish. But, with that said, bismuth is great. You could put a lot of it in the water system, or as we do when we take Pepto-Bismol, or in any sort of ocean, aqueous environment, or landfill, and it really won't have any impact, unlike lead, which is pretty terrible.
It's excellent. We're getting lead out of healthcare, we're getting plastic out of the pharmacy, and we're getting climate action in the hospital. It's a good day for healthcare. So last question for you, and then we'll take one from the audience, is it's a bit of a broad one, but we have one bit of advice, which is find the customer and find the product.
Find the market and the market need.
Yes, find the market and then develop the solution. But what's impressive about your story, right, is that you really have brought new innovation into the healthcare industry. Healthcare needs more innovators. And so what advice do you have for innovators who want to develop healthcare solutions?
It's, again, start with the problem and then really keep focused on finding a solution for that. I consider myself a relatively creative person in the good sense and the bad sense of that word. The bad side is that you have a lot of ideas all the time. And the good side is that every once in a while, one of those ideas is a really good idea. But being able to have those ideas, take them in, assess them, and then decide which ones are good, and then being able to let go of the ones that are not good. It can be really hard to think you have a really great idea and then hear it's not a good idea. That's a really, really hard thing to hear. But you don't really want to throw a lot of resources after a bad idea.
Healthcare is an excellent industry to help you refine great ideas, isn't it? I get told no every day. And so the really good ones are the ones that last. Who has a question for Anna? And then we'll open it up to the panel.
I actually have a question.
Yes.
I literally I grew up with a pediatric dental office as our 2-car garage. So the lead, my mother created her first practice down there. And so the lead apron and the standing outside the room and like pushing the button and all of that, I just really think like what you made, like there really, since like the 80s has been no change in that area. So I think like, I just love what you're doing. That's not really a question, but are you moving into that like dental healthcare area? Because I feel like healthcare, we primarily talk about like hospitals and medicine, but the dental side is also very big on the x-ray, and
yeah. So The big innovation with dental x-ray that is hard to see is that the detectors have gotten really good so that you don't need a lot of radiation. So the secret is when you go in the dentist and they give you an x-ray and they put that apron over you, they're just doing it to make you feel better. You actually really don't need it. The caveat is the one area that in dental that does really need radiation shielding is pediatric thyroid collars, particularly for women or girls, I guess, technically. But girls have extraordinarily radiosensitive thyroids, and they tend to not get protected when they take x-rays or any other type of radiation. So if you have daughters and they're going to get dental x-rays, insist on the thyroid collar. So that's a project I'm working with a couple of pediatric dentists at Oregon Health and Science University to figure out what that might look like, how the material might be able to provide something really interesting. And more importantly, because we've got a lot of product designs there, but because it can sit directly against the skin and it's quite comfortable and we can kind of shape it, you actually get a lot better protection from any other type of shielding that you might use in dentistry. I imagine dentists will buy this and use it, but it's really hard to pitch a product that is more for patient experience as opposed to actual protection.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anna. And so this has been fun, and I think we still have some time for Q&A. I hope everyone else has had fun as well. I've had a great time. I have a question for the group, but I will open it up, to take some from the audience first.
I think Dr. Carol Lynn had a couple questions for Melinda that we didn't get to.
I think that question was actually directed to Terry, the first part of the question, but the second part question, I can quickly just answer it. It depends on the single-use item. The box cannot currently go through a sterilization process, so we couldn't package something in there and sterilize it. But I believe the first part of the question was for Terry.
And what is let's look at the first part of the question.
How can we get administration to make silos or leaders within the field?
Yeah, so what we have done as these pockets of clinicians and specialty area or specialists have come to our attention, we've tried to create opportunities such as little seed grants or ways of promoting their projects. I think that really, again, from inside of a healthcare institution, you got to find the leaders in the organization who are willing to support and promote any kind of new innovative idea. So it's a matter of looking and trying to identify who those leaders are and reaching out to them to see what they can influence on your behalf. So again, it's going back to that network. It might not be in your immediate chain of leadership, but you might have to look outside of that organization to find like-minded individuals.
Excellent. I have a question while we see if there's time for Joey. Let me do a time check. Do we have one more question total, or how much time do we have left?
We've got, I think it's okay if we go over a couple minutes. So I think maybe one more audience question.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. So one more question from the audience. Do you have one in there that you want? Do you want to take a look?
We did have one question from Melinda. Do you have your eye on something specific next, like vitamins or subscriptions?
Yeah, it's definitely an area that we're looking to expand to, especially in vitamins and supplements. That's something that people take often, and it doesn't have to be, everybody takes it not everybody, people who take it every day, and it's an area of opportunity, and yes.
Very cool. Thank you.
Great. Well, again, thanks to everyone for your time and participation. I will hand it back to Lael to close out.
Okay. Thank you so much to our speakers. We appreciate your time and sharing your expertise. Thank you to Erika for moderating this discussion. And I also want to give a big thank you to our volunteers. We couldn't have these events without the volunteers behind it. Thank you. If you like this event, we have more. So please mark your calendars for upcoming events. Please visit our website for more information. And our merch store is now open. Please use our code WCS15OFF for 15% off your next purchase. Next slide. A reminder, if you're not following us on social media, here are our handles. That is all I have. Thank you so much to everyone, and I hope to see you all at our next event.